Aha. All right.
Got it.
Woo. All right.
So
Okay.
greetings from California.
Greetings from Dallas, Texas. That's where I am, by the way.
Oh, okay.
That's where I am. All right, everyone. I have a special interview today with Mark Linett. Now, Mark, the one term that comes to mind when I think of you is cool cat, because you are a pretty cool cat. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But thank you for being on. Thank you for being on.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Okay, okay.
What could we possibly be about to talk about?
I wonder.
Let's say we're anyway.
Okay.
Well, I was going to talk about the Beach Boys. I mean, I do haven't had another career, but the Beach Boys are certainly the longest running um, part of my career, now going on 37 plus years.
Wow. So, okay, first question is going to be a direct question. Out of all the Beach Boys albums, which is your personal favorite?
I get this a lot. I mean, it changes. But for the past while, I think it's still been Friends for a long time.
Friends.
I really admire that record, and it is kind of Brian's last full traditional production. After that, he's sort of either gone a different way, like Love You, or he's just sort of dabbling. He doesn't give his full attention again for quite a while, or not to. I don't think ever really to a Beach Boy album, except perhaps Love You.
And favorite Beach Boys song? Personal favorite.
Oh, that's
Got to be one.
I was just playing it for a work reason, and I really like. I went to sleep. I'm a particular fan of those Brian songs, like that and Busy Doing Nothing. These songs he managed to write, about his life, and did it so well, and so interestingly. Did a few of those, or one of those at least, when I was working with him and Andy Paley in the '90s. Marketplace, and there's another one. Well, there's a bunch of them, but those I always like those. They just somehow seem so real, and of course, then the everything musical about them.
One song. It's gotta be one song. Favorite.
No, I'll say I went to sleep. This this week.
Okay, all right. Let's get down to business. What is your degree in?
My degree? Oh no, Is that what you asked me?
Yeah. What's your degree?
Yeah, no, I'm a college dropout. Went back to college after my first business, a sound company in New York, failed, and I kind of got forced by my parents to go back to college, but I only lasted a year and a half by a total stroke of luck. I was going to BU in Boston, and literally on a Friday afternoon, I got a phone call. The short version of this story, that Frank Zappa was going on tour and just was about to start his first show in, I think, New Haven, and the guy they had just hired to be his sound mixer for the tour had shown up deathly ill and was not going to be able to do the tour. And so they needed somebody, and they needed somebody quick. And frankly, I'm sure they would have taken anybody at that point that knew which way a microphone pointed. But anyway, so I flew down and wound up working for him for a couple of years, and that was really that was my entry into the professional side of the business. I mean, I'd been dabbling around for years, but couldn't really get in the real door. And
well, who taught you
directly? Yeah.
Well, who taught you about sound and sound engineering and?
Well, it's a combination of things. I mean, initially I was, just a hobbyist, self-taught, because there were no books, there were no schools. I wasn't clever enough and nobody had nobody to, inside to advise me that the way to learn in those days, this is the '60s, was to go get a job somewhere where it was being done. So, essentially be an apprentice. Um, so basically, I just learned by doing. For initially, in the job with Frank, led me to another job, which led me to another job, which got me a job in a really good studio out here, and that's when I, got to learn working with guys who knew what they were doing.
So what you were
Um,
when you were, hands-on doing it on your own?
when was I?
What year were you?
Oh, well, I started a sound business in, I want to say 1971. So, and and the other disadvantage there was, in those days there was almost nothing you could buy off the rack. I mean, you basically had to use industrial kind of stuff and build it yourself.
There were no textbooks, or I mean,
Well, there were technical. I'm sure there were technical books, but nobody. Yeah, but the whole industry. I mean, the professional sound industry, was just developing at that point. There was no such thing as concert sound really until then. Um, so there really was no guidebook, if you will. Um, studio work was obviously quite different, but again, you really, you had to be in there and see how it was done, and which of course was kind of why I wanted to do this in the first place. Was I just loved all the records I was buying, including the Beach Boys, and I just being a tinkerer, I just wanted to know how that happened, and maybe be able to do it myself.
gotcha, gotcha. When was the first time you ever heard in your life the term Beach Boys or Brian Wilson?
I don't know about heard, but I can tell you when I recall, maybe I heard something on the radio. I don't know. I mean, AM radio was so omnipresent, in my youth. But I specifically remember it would have been around 1962 when I would have been, 10 or 11, going to a friend's house, and he had an older sister who had all maybe it was 63 because it was more than one record. Had all the early Beach Boy Capital singles and one of those RCA 45 record players that, stacked up 45s. And I remember sitting there and playing them. Now at the time, I would have lumped them in with the whole California mythical, because I'm living in New York, by the way, when I grew up. So the whole mythical California thing. I mean, the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean and whoever else. The beach party movies and all that. I didn't really get the distinction. Although I do think that even then I kind of, well, I think I noticed that in my room wasn't exactly like other records. Even then, they tended to be a little more. Uh, a little deeper. I always thought, certainly in retrospect, keep an eye on summer, and so on and so forth. Even early on in the career. I mean,
Were you always a fan? So have you always been a fan, or like in the '60s when you were a teen? What?
no, I mean they fell out with me. This when FM, alternative music or whatever became the thing, and I'm listening to Hendrix and the Jefferson Airplane and Cream and all that, and suddenly, the Beach Boys and their striped shirts just didn't seem to fit in until the Surf's Up album, which
Yep.
was perfectly applicable, and which I bought, and which was an FM staple.
When did you get assigned to work for the Beach Boys, and what were you tasked to do?
It's another one of those, just right place, luck of the draw. I called what was then called Ocean Way studios out here one day in 1987, and I'm sure I was looking to book time for one of somebody I was working with. And ironically, the studio had been it was what had been Western Recording, where the Beach Boys did nearly all of their recording until 1967. And the woman that booked the place said, "Hey, by the way, we've got a last minute session on Thursday for Brian Wilson, and they don't have an engineer. Are you available?" And I said, "Sure." I had actually worked with Carl a couple of times, most notably doing the session where he came in to him and Christopher Cross, and I think Tom Kelly do the background vocals for David Lee Roth's version of California Girls. And I'd worked with him on some America projects too, because he was good friends with Jerry Beckley from America.
And what year
But
was this?
Hmm?
And what year was this?
1987.
1987.
So I did the session.
So you
came
never
in-
knew Dennis, right?
Sorry?
So you never knew Dennis, of course.
No, Dennis is long gone.
Yeah.
And that was Brian's first solo record, and I wound up working on that for over a year. And towards I don't know, the middle of the project or whatever, Capitol wanted to put Pet Sounds out on CD. CDs were just,
Mm-hmm.
coming around. We were 3 or 4 years in, but they hadn't really done much catalog stuff. So I was given that job. And then from that, we did the twofers, all the Capitol
Oh yeah.
double CDs, and then the Good Vibrations box and the Pet Sounds box, and wherever it goes from there. And I did quite a few albums with engineering for Brian as well. I mean, I didn't work on Imagination, but I did come back starting with Live at the Roxy, and did pretty much everything up through the Disney album.
Yeah. What was the first thing you noticed when you first plowed through the vaults? What was the first thing you noticed, or what's
Well,
some
I
of
had a specific job. I mean, we did. I can't remember the time frame.
like
Probably the
1980?
Good Vibrations box. Okay, so yeah, we did. I mean, we did go looking for a few outtakes for the twofers, but the first big dive was when we were researching the Good Vibrations box, and there was talk of wanting or Capitol talking about wanting to put out Smile
Yes,
the
yeah.
18th time. So
That was
going through all that material.
that was that was going to be my next question. My next question says, now correct me if I'm wrong. You were tasked back in 1988 to compile a Smile album. Is that right?
Well, not to, we didn't get so far as an album. I
Okay.
simply went through, I guess, pretty much everything that that we could find. I mean, in those days, this is before databases, before computers, basically. So it was more a matter of here's the archives with several thousand tapes, and just maybe a car. I mean, there was a file, so I could probably look them up.
Yeah.
Just going through and pulling out everything that made sense. And
Where do you start? Like, how do you start something like that? Like you walk in, you see all this, and it's like, how do you start this?
you just pull everything that you think will be useful. And and that I was doing this at Capitol.
Mhm.
So just bringing everything there to a small mix room, and making rather quick rough mixes. And of course they leaked out, but
We'll
in
get
the
to
end, in the end, the band voted not to do it, and it'd be
Not to
another,
do what?
not to have the project go forward.
Which project?
Smile.
Oh, okay. Now, what year did everything finish getting digitized?
Oh, it never has. I mean,
Really?
well, yeah, we started digitizing around in 2000, and
1,000.
somewhat on a need basis. I mean, the big projects, well, the GB box we didn't digitize; it was still on tape. Um, but anyway, so we started wholesale digitizing in 2000, and I mean, was I haven't done anything maybe in about a year, but still doing it, as need be. There's a lot of live stuff that we haven't digitized.
Wow.
Like all the 73 tour tapes. They had their own truck at that point, so there's 14 or 15 shows. Um, Pretty much the same set list every night, but that they recorded, that some of which were never even listened to.
So things weren't digitized in 87, 93 for the buck. None of that.
Well, it was, well, there really wasn't. Well, you could have digitized it to digital tape, but that, it was management. Beach Boy management didn't give us the authorization till around 2000. I guess before we were doing, or as we were doing, when Alan Boyd had come in and we were doing the Hawthorne California project. I think that's the first time we really got into digitizing, because I mean, I must have had Pro Tools by then.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd used digital, well, really as in Brian's solo album in '87. We were doing a lot of that on digital tape, and then the Pet Sound Sessions, creating the stereo mix that needed digital tape recorders, but we weren't really archiving digital until around 2000.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now this surprised me. It's the master tapes for Heroes and Villains Part One. I Get Around, fun, fun, fun. Be True to Your School, The Warmth of the Sun, Don't Worry, Baby, and like more. So all those master tapes are missing. Is that right?
No, all those were missing. We
Okay.
recovered all. Well, yeah, we're missing the parts of Heroes and Villains, and we have nothing on Be True to Your School, but all the other ones uh, we found. I don't know what it is.
I'm reading an outdated book then.
Oh, that's Dominic's. What is that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, oh,
the
yeah,
quote I
yeah.
found. So that was 95. So hey, so that's good news. That's good news.
Well,
Never.
and some of that stuff,
Yeah.
some of those tapes had been pilfered. I don't. I mean, I guess early '80s. Maybe around the same time as the Unsurpassed Masters, or whatever they are, Sia Tunes bootlegs, got put together by persons that unknown, still unknown.
Well, just in general, how do master tapes go missing anyway? Just in
Something easy. Somebody had access to them, and walked out with them. I mean, I can recall, this stuff just wasn't well guarded. I remember when I first started, tapes at Capitol tended to be like all over the place, in hallways, and in the basement of the Pantages Theater, and they finally put them all in a real location, everything. I don't remember when, maybe in the 2000s, but so it's a secure facility, but they didn't even check your bag when you when you left. You could have been walking out with anything that would have fit in your bag. So um, this, I think this happened a lot, and frankly, for a while there, labels tended to hire obsessive fans to do their archive reissues, and that's a little too much of a
Yeah.
crime of opportunity, shall we say? So when you learn certain things that I won't talk about, you find an interesting array of people that were involved with bootlegs at some point.
And speaking of missing master tapes, of course, as everyone knows, I believe the only two master tapes missing for the Beatles are "Love Me Do" and She Loves You. I don't think those have ever been found.
It's interesting because I mean, one thing that EMI seemed to be very aware of was that keep everything on the nobody understand that nobody thought aside from them and they're kind of in another world. Nobody thought any of this stuff had any shelf life, and so people routinely left the multi tracks wherever. I mean, most of the Beach Boy stuff, as far as I know, was pretty much where they recorded it until they had an engineer they were working with go look for it all in '78. Unfortunately, he wasn't aware that they had worked at CBS recording, so he didn't go there, and that's where the Good Vibrations 1-inch master apparently was. And so when all those tapes got destroyed a couple of years later, that's probably, it probably shared the same fate. I'd love to be proved wrong, and but
Now,
it's been 30 years and it hasn't shown up. So
now I remember you saying I remember you saying I was a toddler when you made this quote. Let me say, I read in that you said in 1996 that about 98% of Pet Sounds master tapes exist. Oh, so
other than that, it's almost everything. The only thing, I mean, you
so
can never
what?
say
Yeah,
maybe something was done in this is no good, erase it, throw it away. But for
so
of
yeah, so
the
90.
album, all that's missing is the session for Don't Talk. We don't have the tracking date for that for some reason. We do have the overdub string session.
Yeah, so 98% of Pet Sounds that exists. What's the percentage for Smile of what
No
is?
way of knowing really. I mean, since we don't, since uh,
You gave a
it was
percentage
finished
of
album at
Pet
the time.
Sounds
Yeah.
98. So could you give a rough guess
Well, we
on?
know. I mean, we know of a few. It's interesting. A few things that we've heard on acetates that we don't have, and we don't have any
Yeah,
tapes. My suspicion is, that and we do know about a 4-track assembly of masters that went missing, and some other recordings that were done at CBS that we don't have. Um, but Brian was just really experimenting all over the place. So and apparently at one point had tapes at home, and who knows what happened to them.
we'll get to the acetates.
Yeah, so I mean, the wonderful thing is that the normally, like I said, if a record be completed and either the group would turn in all their tapes or they'd get left behind and maybe lost or not. But if the record company got them, they would toss everything except the final 3-track, 4-track, 8-track, whatever, and of course the album master and any unreleased songs. They wouldn't keep all the session tapes, and which is really a shame. But it would have been really a tragedy if all those tapes of the Beach Boys had gotten
Hindsight,
landfill.
hindsight is 2020, isn't it?
Well, as I said, nobody thought this stuff. Nobody cared. Nobody thought this stuff. It was disposable. It was for kids. It was, I mean, the adults in the room thought, not unwisely. I mean, put it on a real basic level. Is anybody going to want to hear the outtakes for Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow
Yeah.
in 50 years? Well, maybe I'd say maybe. Back then, yeah, you could certainly understand that was a reasonable attitude. This was not serious music. This was not art.
Yeah.
This this was commerce.
Now you mentioned art. Let's get to art for a second. Uh, you claimed in 2011 about Smile, quote, there was nothing even remotely resembling a finished album back in the day. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, nothing to indicate to us that Brian had in any way started thinking about, well, an order of songs, um, much less, assembling the songs. I mean, some of the songs were, pretty well laid out. Wind chimes, wonderful things like that.
Yeah.
But songs like Dada and certainly Heroes and Villains. I mean, 80,000 ways you could have put those together, and it doesn't. It his telling it and what we could find, it doesn't look like there was more than a smattering of an attempt to do any of that. He was um, he was much he was still into creating pieces of music, little sections, which, as he said, was about all he and Van Dyke could concentrate on at a time. Um, rather than the huge effort that would have been required to then organize it all. I mean, the effort that he put into creating the finished good vibrations is enough, which to me is enough for one person for a lifetime.
Well,
When
I remember reading. Oh gosh, how many combinations were there of Good Vibrations? I mean, like versions.
oh, there aren't so much versions. I mean, he cut it as a song twice, pretty much the same way. And then he started doing pieces. Here's a verse done this way, here's a chorus done that way. Um, and most of that stuff didn't get used. And the last thing I believe he did was the quiet organ bridge near the end. But and I suppose one advantage was that, except for that, there's two bridges. So except for the two bridges, it is still pretty much verse, chorus. Even though he had a lot of different ways to do the verses and the choruses, it was still, kind of a conventional song cycle. Whereas Heroes and Villains and some of the rest were, complete Dada-esque pieces that could be assembled in all kinds of ways, and in some cases, pieces of one could fit into one of the others. So
I'm trying to find the quote in David Leaf's book right here about how many versions there were of Good Vibrations. I forgot the number. I should know this.
it's not. They're really well. I don't know. I mean, it's not even versions. I mean, let's just say that besides the ones on the finished record,
It says $50,000 worth, 6 months, 90 hours of recording tape, and 11 complete versions.
no.
Said one was even broadcast on the radio. Are you guys going to release those 11 versions, or is it, or
There aren't anything like 11 versions that I know of. That doesn't mean that he didn't put it together and then trash it. I
yeah,
can think of kind of 4 or 5. It depends on what you mean by a version. Um, there are sessions where he's done a verse and they'll do a verse and they'll do a chorus, but no indication that he ever put them together. So, I mean, the only thing that I can recall offhand is that, other than the two sessions where it was recorded like a song, the only thing I can recall is an assembly that's pretty well, relatively close to what the finished record is. I mean, it's the same verses as the record, and a different chorus, and doesn't have the second bridge, of course. I think that's kind of exaggerated. Just like what was I watching? I was watching something. I don't know why I did this. A video or YouTube or something, where somebody was claiming, what was he claiming? 190 hours or 180 hours or something of tape. I mean, it's absurd. It's not. Oh no, it was 90 hours, which would have been 180 reels of tape. Well, there's a lot of tape, but it's not 180 reels of tape. It's more like, maybe 30, which is still
yeah.
ridiculous, or not ridiculous, but a lot. Um, but these things tend to get exaggerated.
I think it said one version was even a different version was played on the radio. I'm trying to find that quote and think.
Yeah, but I sort of, without finding it,
I just,
it's very close to the finished version. It's not. I mean, it's, if
uh,
I'm remembering correctly, it's like 80% the finished
gosh,
record. We all know. Maybe it's missing that bridge. I don't remember, but it's it's not like he used put a version together from completely different verses and choruses. We I assembled just a whole bunch of the sections, one after another, stuff that was never used, and
I'm surprised that a lot of fans like to remix uh uh Good Vibrations. I mean, that mono version of Good Vibrations heard around the world was Brian's final it. That was it. So I've always wondered, like, why would fans want to remix that? That's
because
what I mean?
they can't. I mean, that's something
But
that I'm
it's
seeing a lot
finished.
now. This AI,
It's
all this AI stuff is throwing the door open to anybody with a is the, even this free
but it
soft,
but it's
to
finished. It's finished anyway. There was a interesting quote that I found from Darren Sahanaja, and he said, quote, I think that they, Brown and Van Dyke, would both agree that they finished Smile. And if the two creators say that they finished it, then in my mind, that's Smile as it should be realized. End
right.
quote. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the only finished, official finished version is that one. And as I've always said, the
Which one?
one of the proofs that it could not possibly have
Oh,
existed
that
in
one, yeah.
'66 is that in the end it covers three sides of an album, and Smile was never contemplated to be any more than a single disc. So an awful lot of material would have been chucked um, for a finished record to be completed in '66, 67. But all this, where we're going technologically raises all these interesting questions. I mean, I've heard a lot of this fan based AI stuff, and there's a fan based Smile out there, which is a little over the top. But on the other hand, because of all the gaps, I'm talking about a Beach Boys version. I mean, it does attempt to use AI, vocal simulation and so forth, to fill in a lot of the gaps. And so I wouldn't argue that playing it for someone who doesn't know the record, it might actually be a better representation. Now, there's things in there that are artistic judgments. I mean, putting
Yeah.
putting sections on top of sections or editing things in, it becomes a do-it-yourself jigsaw puzzle. But it's kind of a funny thing. And then I mean, I've heard a lot of these, having Brian sing "Guess I'm Dumb" and all that using AI vocals. But well, yeah, but I heard, I don't know the song "Thank Him."
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So there's a version of that on the web that it was a demo that Brian got in '63. We never had anything but an acetate on it until very recently. We found the actual tape of the demo, but that's all it is. And somebody created a full Beach Boy version from scratch. And the only thing that I spot is that the track isn't quite,
Yeah.
accurate. But other than that, I think I don't really have a problem with it. And you do have this question. I thought of this recently. What happens when an older artist or an artist decides, look, you get old. I can't sing the way I did when I was 20 or 30, but
Yeah.
I want to make a new record. Okay, so the artist uses AI. They sing, but instead of their older voice, they can make it sound like they're 20 again.
Especially
Put that in I mean, it really
especially
isn't any different than, well, I'm going to use a synthesizer instead of a real string section.
instead, especially in the last year and a half, AI, how much AI has just grown and improved. Is there any plans at all for further for AI for the Beach Boys? Really,
Not, not that I know of. The whole industry hasn't figured it out yet. I mean, I'll be very, I mean, I'll be very surprised if overall at some point we don't start to see, new albums essentially extinct, let's say extinct artists. But the
oh,
thing I was talking about is a little different.
Elvis singing with Tupac and all those different combinations.
Sure, absolutely.
It's really-
And then going out on tour, and they've done this. I mean, going out on tour with a hologram,
With
But
Carl,
yeah,
yeah,
the
right.
thing that
Okay.
subtly intrigues me is an artist using AI for themselves. So you can't,
Yeah,
any questions about what would the artist want, or integrity and all that, that goes away. I mean, to me, people have been auto tuning for
yeah,
20 years now,
yeah.
and there really isn't any difference. It's the same principle. It's not what you sang. It's pitch corrected, sometimes in a way to be unobtrusive, in some way, it's sometimes used as an effect, or a crutch as well. But so
Let me get something real.
we may be seeing it already, and I just don't. How would you know
Yeah,
unless somebody said it?
let
People,
me get
by the way,
let me get
yeah,
something real quick. Hold on. So in terms of completeness, so at least the album cover was complete and the back cover,
right.
of
Yeah,
course.
and
Yeah,
that from what we can tell was capital, pounding, saying, "Where's the record? Where's the record?"
yeah, exactly.
Gotta
And the
get,
and the
give them
book
something,
and the booklet was
right,
complete, right?
inordinate amounts of money.
And the booklet was complete, right?
I don't know about complete. I don't.
That's in the 2011 box set, vinyl box set.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Probably not, because Frank Marshall made some
This
new art for songs that he hadn't done at the time.
Now this blew me away. Brad Elliott wrote
Hmm.
uh Capitol had printed more than 400,000 album jackets
That
and,
seems unlikely.
and accompanying booklets, all of which had to be scrapped years later. I read that and I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute. So are there some, and I read somewhere that they were later scrapped, but
Yeah, they were well, yeah. What was I don't know that the booklets part
that
is
would
true.
have been, but
I know there were covers. Yeah,
so 400,000 of
unlikely.
printed.
Really
If
unlikely.
that's if that's true, and if they existed, how much would that be worth? A fortune, right?
What, to have made them?
If they had made some and some
Yeah,
survived.
be a lot of money. I mean, 400,000. You got to figure they were, at least $1 a piece.
Just the yeah.
I find that, who knows what the story is, but I
Yeah.
find it hard to believe, just because there wasn't an actual record. So what are you gonna do? Make the sleeve and then make the record fit this? That isn't the way things are usually done. So, but who knows? I mean, there's a lot of pressure on Brian at the time, apparently, and so, and a lot of players. So who knows what was going on
Yeah.
to so that they could keep working.
And this blew me away too. He also said Smile originally was planned for release in December 1966, before Christmas.
Well,
It's
you're right. Yeah, I'm not really in that area of history, but
that blew me away.
uh,
And he wrote, in fact,
that's Brad, that's Brad fanboy. Um, that's his opinion. I don't know where he gets that from.
he wrote, in fact, a Billboard ad that month heralded the release of the album. And it says an in-store promotional cardboard display featured the Smile album cover among other Christmas releases. Now, it seems like it would be impossible to release the album by Christmas. I mean, so much stuff was not even recorded yet. I mean,
Who
and
knew? Yeah, who knows? This all could have been done on the assumption.
like
Who knows?
the only thing finalized for Heroes and Villains, the main song, the only thing done, correct me if I'm wrong, by Christmas or mid-December was like the verse in Barnyard. Is that right? So
I have no idea.
it's like they haven't even
You're
started.
talking to the wrong guy about this kind of stuff.
Okay.
And that kind of minutia doesn't,
Yeah.
doesn't doesn't concern me. And I know from other examples that there's just too many ways. You, taking it's an element like that and saying, oh, that means that it must have been finished.
Oh no, I'm not saying it was.
No,
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 no.
I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
this is what people do. I mean, for example, it's like people looking at the AFM sheets and saying, "Oh, that tells me something about who played on the," and it may or may not be true because the AFM sheets are just a way for for people to get paid.
Yeah.
So you'll see Chuck Britz on a lot of AFM sheets because he was a member of the union, and Brian would put him on there so he'd get paid an extra $100 a session because he
Yeah.
was just a staff engineer at Western getting a weekly paycheck and maybe some overtime. So, trying to trying to look at this stuff like it's the Dead Sea Scrolls and it's gonna tell us everything. I mean,
Dead Sea
it's
Scrolls
sort of,
tell us a lot. Anyway,
I'm saying that,
yeah,
but
I get what you mean. I get what you mean then. I get yeah. I
you
don't think
can't.
I don't think
Some of
anyone.
most of these questions are unanswerable anyway, and probably,
It's okay. We're gonna cut out whatever's not. It's not gonna be. I don't think anyone's ever done this with you. Has anyone going through just as fast as we can? And I figure we could do it in chronological order by date since there was no sequence at all about the songs in Smile. Just real
you
quick.
can try. I don't,
All right. So so the first Smile session was Wind Chimes on August 3rd, 66. But what blew me away is that I did not know that there was a much earlier session of Heroes and Villains from uh May of 66, and that's now missing, which you write in the book in the CD liners or the box set.
Oh, that it is. Yeah, then go with that. I can't help you with this kind of stuff. See, while I did an awful lot of work, or not a lot of work, but some work with various smile sessions for that aborted project, which never got beyond. Here's a bunch of stuff, and what we put on the Good Vibrations box. I didn't really do anything, with the stuff in any kind of order or trying to put it together until after Brian did his version from scratch. So
Gotcha.
at that point, everything was based on what how Brian had finished the album. So things like, yeah, sure, we'll indicate the dates, for historical interests and all that, but it never entered into anything other than that relevant to creating the box. Smile gets very, very vapor-like because of how much was not completed, the things we know were lost, the likelihood that other things were recorded and tossed. I mean, I had a very bad feeling for Brian for years. So the possibility that he threw things away, or they got thrown away when he moved, or and he didn't care. As I've said, I didn't even realize until we did Smile, the album, not the performance even, which came first. It's the other interesting thing. That how much Brian had been carrying around the feeling of failure, we'll say, for not completing it until we did it. And I saw what a difference it made to him to realize that he had finally finished it. So prior to that, I mean, anything could have happened. I mean, we know that, for example, he didn't care about his outtakes either. The master tape for the session for Little Girl I Once Knew, he took it home. He had a 4-track at home, and he took that tape home, or he had it at home, and he recorded over 1 track with him and his, wife, and with Marilyn Diane, just playing word games. Raced right over it. So, the likelihood of other things, get being within reach and not being preserved is huge.
Yeah.
Uh,
I realize I realize that if we go some session by session, we'd be here for 4 hours. So let's not do that. Let's
it's
not
not going to be any good anyway, because I wouldn't have much to
let's
say about
not let's not do that. How about we go alphabetically, just real quick about the song. So Barnyard, that only exists on an acetate, is that right?
I think we should just drop this whole thing, because I'm not the person. I'm not the obsessive knowledge
Uh,
base to tell you this. That's not my
who would you, oh, okay.
that's not my role. It never has been.
Okay.
I'm an
Yeah,
audio engineer and producer, so I'm dealing, well, for like I said, with as far as Smile goes, the whole intent of doing the Beach Boy version, um, was to emulate what Brian had decided was the finished record. Um, some of which was creative license, not creative license, but I mean, it was new, new in 2003, 2004. So aside from, and now it's all, we're 12 years, 13, 12, 13 years later, to even reflect on, what we had to, what we found, what went together. I mean, even that's going to be kind of vague,
gotcha.
coming from me at this point.
What truly blew me away, and I did not realize this until like 2 weeks ago, was that there are 13 sessions of Heroes and Villains missing from the vaults. 13.
Well, I don't know where that idea comes from. I'm not
That's
aware
in
of
the
where that.
that's in the Small Sessions booklet. It says
Oh
mail.
yeah, but well, maybe okay.
Oh, okay, okay. I was like,
I mean, I don't know what to say.
okay.
I
Yeah,
guess it wouldn't surprise me, but although that seems like a lot, um, but who knows? I mean, like I say, I mean, city. The caveat that, or the statement that, we feel like we have, over 90% of what the group recorded is only based on what we know was recorded. I mean, there could be 10 out, there could be 6 albums worth of material and songs that, got left and trashed, or thrown away and trash. I mean, we know, for example, that when we recovered Shutdown Volume 2, the whole album, that those tapes had been discarded, probably uh, by Murray or Brian himself, or just nobody cared. Probably when they moved out of the house in Hawthorne, because we've seen pictures in the kitchen with tapes up above the kitchen cabinets, and
gotcha.
nobody thought this stuff was worth anything. I mean, out it went with the trash. Somebody had it, and two different people got it, and somehow we managed to get it back.
Cabinescence that was eventually finished and put on 2020. So
Yeah, and that was on that 4-track compiled Smile reel that's been lost somewhere. And we know it existed because we have mixes from Capitol of Cabinescence, but the 4-track is nowhere to be
so
found.
the only thing missing from Cabinescence from '67 were the lead vocals, correct?
Presumably, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The song that really just tickles my brain is "Child is Father of the Man." To me, that seems like the most unfinished song from it. I know you guys eventually released Brian's mix in 2018.
Yeah, I heard it was asking for that, so we did it. But there's nothing special about it. It you know.
The piano bridge is longer, I noticed. So he obviously extended that. Was there a reason why that wasn't put on the small box set, just for time constraints, or what?
I think I don't remember exactly, probably because it didn't seem different enough from, I mean, to be honest, the only reason to release it is we're being completist here. I mean,
Yeah,
something, it was something that got cobbled together at the time, but there's nothing, it's not like, the acetates, the Drury Parks acetates that we've never been able to get a copy of because somebody paid a lot of money and just wants to,
we'll get to that.
yeah,
I
wants
I,
to.
re I have a whole thing on acetates. Just in just a second. What
Well,
about
that's the answer. We didn't think it was important enough. Here's one more thing, just because it's original. But everybody yelled and screamed,
yo?
so we
Really?
put it out the first chance we got.
And probably because Child's Father Man morphed into what was that? What was the song it morphed into? But the reason why it was on the Wake the World. Oh my gosh, I'm having a brain freeze. What's the song it morphed into?
Not look.
Which is the reason why you put it on the Wake the World session compilation, because the song turned into one of those songs. I'll have to look it up. I'll put it at the bottom of the screen when I
I I'm,
edit the video
I'm
later.
drawing a blank, but that doesn't mean anything.
I'll put it at, if I find it, I'll put it at the bottom of the screen right here. If I'm wrong, I'll just cut this out. But the vocals on Child's Father the Man only exist on the acetates, is that right? But you flew those in on the 2011 box set. So could
I'm
you
not,
do that on
no,
the
I don't. Is that what we did? I don't.
you
I'd have to
you
go on the tapes and look.
you took the so yeah, apparently the vocals only exist on acetates, and you flew those in on the 2011 box set
Did we say that? Because that doesn't ring a
during the
bell.
reconstruction.
It doesn't.
So I was thinking, if you guys could fly it in there, could you fly them in on Brian's original mix, which you guys released in 2018? To me, that would be like the only thing that I see is like, oh, I really wish that was still released. You know what I mean? I really wish that was released. You know what I mean? But anyway,
Well, there's a million things like that. I mean, I've talked about. Look. We did the Beach Boys version of Smile in mono, in
yeah,
part because there were a lot of things we didn't have. We only had mono mixes, Wonderful and Old Master Painter. Those multis are. I mean, we have the session, but the actual master were on that 4-track reel. And we didn't have. There was no AI extraction. And I'd have to look. I don't remember doing that with Child, but it's possible. I know we did it. We tried doing it with
maybe
Barnyard.
there's just stuff that we haven't seen, obviously. Maybe
But
there's a,
now, so I mean, but we could do a nice stereo version of Smile. What we don't have, we could create using AI. Problem is, we're never going to be asked to do it.
that
It's
would be,
not.
I could live without that. It would have been in mono anyway. So 67.
Well, but I got people that are like, "Oh, can't you do it in stereo?" I mean,
Are
uh,
people really asking for it to be released in stereo? Are people really down?
yeah, people have. I mean, how many would care?
Yeah, yeah.
People
That,
ask, and yeah, why aren't you? It's another one of those. Why aren't you doing it? Well, part of the reason is that no one's going to fund the project. And if it were a what do you want to do? That wouldn't,
yeah.
well, that would be on the list, I suppose. But
So
there are other things.
it looks like that, just from a layman's point of view, that perspective, that the vocals only exist on on acetates, and that you isolated them or put them in on the box set. So like, my logic is like, I guess you could do that on Brian's actual mix, since the 2011 box set, it's a different structure than Brian's original mix that you guys released in
Yeah,
2018.
well, it's just an edit. I mean, the mix. You're not talking about not a whole,
An
not a
edit.
whole lot of choices in what the instrumental mix is going to be, because it's
If that
probably
could, if
Moses
that
on 3 tracks.
if that could be done, that would be great. But it's not
Oh,
my.
it's all, yeah.
I could
It's
sleep at night. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
it's probably possible, and it'll only be more possible, judging by the way these AI programs are growing, maturing, if you will. Just the number of things that now it can try to pull out. And if you,
Some fan actually did what I just said, and it sounds great.
yeah, well, that's the other thing is that,
Yeah,
fortunately or unfortunately, well,
yeah,
probably fortunately, because I don't think a record company would ever do it anyway, because it's not financially viable. The record business, you can't really do these art projects anymore. They've got to make
at
a lot
least,
to to be desirable from a business point of view.
it's like
And
at least some fan made it, and I can just listen to it and just pretend.
exactly, and that's probably the only way it's ever going to be.
Yeah,
So, I guess
just the
you
way it
could say
is.
that's unfortunate. On the other hand, I think the realistic approach would be good, because that's the only way it's ever going to get, it's ever going to get to the
Yeah,
world, anyway, because we're,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I wish we could do more of these things. But like I said, in the list of things that I would want to do, that wouldn't be top of the list, because there's a lot of stuff, you know, and some things, we still hope to find that we think are out there. I mean, not from that period, but from the 70s, that would make really interesting, completely new releases, as opposed to, one little piece from Smile that,
yeah. That's just the little. I
I mean, Barnyard, for example. I mean, I'd be tempted to
Fun.
take now. I'd be tempted to take, the Beach Boy Barnyard, and get the vocals off Brian's version, and which
No,
is what they've done. Well, but like
nah.
I said,
Some people,
here's the thing: from a consumer point of view, from a completist point of view, it's one
yeah,
thing. I don't want to put new vocals on an old thing, but from somebody just listening to to Smile the concept. If you if you went and got an orchestra, and maybe some of this will happen, and a whole new band and a whole new bunch of singers, and you did Smile, just like, I mean, that's the music and the art, as opposed to that particular performance. So, if you, which is what, these people playing with Smile and doing AI stuff have done. They've made, to me, to be honest, they've made something that might be more accessible to somebody who would listen to the Beach Boy version, or maybe even Brian's version, and go, I don't get it. It's not finished. Doesn't sound finished. Okay, well, here's a version that's,
yeah. Some people have
more finished.
flown in the 2004 vocals, which technically, yeah, that's the finished vocals along on the 1966 Barnyard. It's like it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't know,
Well, now what you can do is you can take the
because like
vocal arrangement from 2004, replace vocal parts with Beach Boy AI parts, and
it's this weird thing where the 1966 Barnyard, that's the canon uh instrumental, but the vocal 2004, that's the official and finalized vocal. So it's like, anyway, let me get.
well, the artist finished version is Brian's version from 2003, 2004. I mean,
Now moving on to Do You Like Worms? And
yeah, there's the Good Vibrations box.
yeah, let me just say, I'm so glad that this thing exists. I'm so glad that you guys did this.
Well, see, it's interesting. This wasn't our idea. This came from the record label. Let's do but what did they care? That probably cost more than any of the later projects, that maybe Pet Sounds, because they weren't out to make money with it. They were selling, 20 million Bob Seger records, and 20 million Steve Miller records, so they could afford to spend whatever that costs. I have no idea, $50,000 or something to put that together, and it good for the brand, good for the record label. Here's our history. None of that exists anymore.
Let me just say, I'm very glad that you guys put Do You Like Worms on here, which you made based off of Brian's rough mixes. I mean, because
Yeah, well,
because of course that was changed in the 2011. So I'm just very glad that that false ending at the end and just it's on here. So it's like I like that song.
And I guess we created that. I mean,
Yeah.
back then it's still, tape and, mixing to tape and doing edits and,
Brad
all
Elliott thinks
the.
that song was finished, and if you, I mean, I know it's missing lead vocals, but it's like, I mean, you had what 7 months to record vocals. Maybe they were recorded. I mean, that's just something you could anyway. But
We don't, like I said, the problem with Smile overall is we don't know how much just never get done, or what, was
but
partially done and then got lost. And, I mean, as I said, the stuff that's on the Drury Parks acetates, almost all of that, I heard it all, is stuff that I'd never heard. I mean, no, not hugely, not monumental, like finding the Good Vibrations 8-track, but it's like, well, I never heard any of, a whole bunch of this stuff at all.
I thought it was just
So
one thing.
what happened to it?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Why hasn't the original track mix of Fire been released with the crackling sounds? That's on the bootleg. That's the one thing that's on that's on one of the bootlegs that I wish was released. The without the
We didn't put that on.
you guys put the crackling sound effects, but that was overdubbed onto the track. The crackling
Yeah,
sounds of the
it's
fire.
just cellophane. Yeah, it's on the 4-track or 3-track, whatever it is. Anyway, yeah, but so
I'm
what we
surprised.
didn't,
I'm surprised.
you're gonna know more about this than me, but we
So-
didn't put that on the anywhere on the box set.
You didn't no, just the because you guys added the woodpecker vocals, the da, 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 to match the
Oh,
2004.
I took those off of Smiley Smile.
Yeah, exactly.
That that was because we're trying to make it as much.
But
Well,
like
trying to make it. It wouldn't have been on the album, quote unquote, the Smile album version by the Beach Boys, because Brian didn't have crackling on his. So, but we didn't put a mix of it anywhere.
you put the crackling sound, you guys put the crackling sound effects, but Brian had an actual mix with the song without the woodpecker chants, the fire song with the crackling all the way through. And I listened. It's the only thing that's on the bootlegs that I feel should absolutely I feel has to be released.
There's also a question. I'm not 100% sure about this, whether the mix you're referring to is actually a Brian mix, or a mix that was done in the late 70s and heavily bootlegged. Because we have the tape that those early Smile stuff comes from, and it's not an original. It's either something that somebody made at the time in the late 70s,
It
or
was in
it's a copy of a
it's
of a
the
rough mix.
it's the version that's in the 1988 documentary.
Yeah. No, I know what. Yeah, I know.
It's that
Which
version.
version you're talking about, but the tape it comes from. Well, we do have the 3-track,
Oh, so
and
that
the version that's in the 80 doc is probably from the 3-track, and they created it.
so
It's hard to say. See, the other problem is that clearly, when the big swath of bootlegs was made, somebody had a lot of total access and made a lot of mixes, but also made off with things that were easy to play. Nobody's going to have a 4-track at home, but a 2-track, sure. And then the other thing is that
now
we know that a bunch of tapes were liberated, shall we say,
yeah.
by somebody, and I know this was like 15, 20 years ago. We got approached by somebody, this young kid out of Canada, who said he had a box of, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 Beach Boys masters.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
Yeah. And and we got to look at them, and they clearly filled a lot of gaps in things like, tape boxes. We had tape boxes at Capitol with the wrong tape in them. So this stuff was all stolen. I Get Around session, Honda 55, the Do It Again master, multi-track, the We're Together Again master. Anyway, the odd thing was, so we got, we got access to these and saw what they were, and of course wanted somebody to buy them. Capitol didn't want to buy them, and I don't know why. The Beach Boys didn't want to buy them because they don't really have they can't exploit them. So I wound up ponying up whatever it was, 15, 20 grand.
Wow.
And used them anyway for a long time. And finally, the new management company that took over, I don't know what it was now, 3 or 4 years ago, they agreed to reimburse me.
That's amazing. All right, we have what, 10 more minutes? Okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Okay. Good Vibrations, of course, that was released because I don't feel like anyone's ever gone through like, song by song. I just want to do this like in like two minutes. So Good Vibrations, that was of course released. Now Heroes and Villains Part 1. So I heard a story that so Heroes and Villains Part 1, that is on the twofer, the 1990 twofer, and is on, which I have over here, and which is on this, which is labeled as alternate version.
That's an original rough mix from a copy of a rough mix, I should say.
Because it no longer exists, of course.
Well,
So
that's the only, well, that tape exists. Where the original ended up, who knows? As
so
I
that
said, people got in and stole, clearly stole quarter-inch.
you found that in the vaults, is that right?
Yeah.
You found so that's the finished Heroes and Villains Smile version, which you found.
Well, finished. Best you could say it was finished because it's not the released version. It's it was finished.
What would have been on Smile?
The finished version the day Brian did it. I mean, we have a lot of tapes like that. There's I think the tape that has of God Only Knows that has the sax solo on it purports, on the box to be a finished mix. But that's because that day it was mixed and it wasn't a rough mix. He thought it was going to be the final mix, but it isn't, obviously.
So it's just a rough. So it's not the final.
We don't know. I mean, all you can say is he put a lot of work in it. He edited a bunch of pieces together, so it wasn't like.
So it wasn't marked final. So it wasn't marked final next to it on the.
I couldn't tell you. I'd have to look at it, but it's a copy anyway. So, but without seeing it,
people herald that as like this version is a bona fide document of what would have been. It's like all we have of Smile. You know what I mean? Or is that
just? Like I said,
that's what I've heard.
Best I could surmise is that for a short period of time, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe more than that, maybe only till Brian got it home and played the acetate, more likely, given how many of the pieces there were. That was something that, took a fair amount of work to create. So it was probably, it could likely have been intended potentially as the finished record. But as we've seen, one of the main attributes of Smile is that it never really coalesced because it was all these pieces, especially Heroes and Villains. My God, what we put out a long time ago and then on the box set as part 2, that's literally, was me just taking all these pieces in the order that they happen to be on the reel because they all fit and going bup, 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 bup.
That was going to be my question. What was the choice of the order for part 2?
It's just the way it's the way, if I recall correctly, it's the way there's a reel of all of them, and it's hard to believe that they're in an intended order, but just playing them, they all fit together. So there you are.
This shocked me when in this book it says,
oh, don't take too much with that book.
Oh, it says it mentions you, so I'm just going to read this real quickly. It says, in the case of Heroes and Villains Part 2, all that remained was a tape reel with 3 sections that needed to be spliced together. It says there were obvious splices from their placement on the reel, and Mark Linett took cues from Brian's instructions to the group on the session reel. And then it says Brian Wilson is heard on these sessions coaching vocal parts and describing which sections proceed and follow each other. And with this information, Mark Linett was able to reconstruct part two, and then that's how you got part two. Is that just out of this world, or is that not right at all?
You know,
Or do you, or did you,
that's not how I remember it.
or was it just, or was part two the structure of part two
I don't think there was
order,
any.
like you said?
I don't think there was any necessarily any part two. There's just an awful lot of Smile themes, and I mean, the part two, is the same. Where did we release it? Is it
You
on?
released it. Well, what's interesting is that you first released it on here,
Okay,
and
yeah, but
and the
I didn't
same order is on the box set.
right, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I just couldn't remember where we had released it. Yeah, I mean, it's just an order that fell together. It wasn't,
So it wasn't
like
Brian's choice. It was just random.
Brian. Well, Brian had nothing to do with the GV box um, to begin with. None of them, none of them did. It was just something we did, and then revisiting it for the Smile box.
And then it said,
Oh, a great order. It was like, why change it? I mean, you could, I've heard stories. I remember back in the day hearing stories that people would go to Brian's house. This is during the making of Smile, and he had this pile of acetates, and they said that you couldn't even read what was on them. But I don't think that's true, because we have a few, and I think he must have done this at home. It's like a Band-Aid, literally a Curad Band-Aid with something written on it, or it's written on in grease pencil. But that he used to shuffle them, like play this one, and then play this one, and then play this one, and then play that one, and then play this one again. I mean, he would be shuffling Smile pieces or Heroes and Villains pieces or whatever, at home for family and friends.
that's
And
and that's another thing, because at what point were the names of the songs written on the side of the tape boxes? Because from what you described, it sounds like, oh, Smile is in this, any piece of the puzzle, take your pick. But like all of the backing track of like what was ended up being Cabinescence was like on one day. Wind Chimes, that was on the same day. So like,
those had titles.
was it all random and then only later?
They always had titles. Going back further, you have California Girls, when Brian tracked it, was I don't know, or we don't know, or something like that.
Now Holidays, that was complete, right? The instrumental track.
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, the instrumental tracks, except for Heroes and Villains, tended to be much more together, with the exception of Surfs Up, which I mean, maybe part two was recorded, never, there's supposedly an AFM sheet, but that doesn't mean the session ever happened, or was canceled, or
we're
who knows what.
We're almost done here. So I'm in great shape. That's of course missing vocals. You mentioned I left to say Dada. Was that, you said that wasn't complete, or was it?
That's really at the end of things. I mean,
is the mix what's on? Is the mix that what's on here the final version?
Oh God, no, sure it wasn't.
Really?
We have almost there are fewer mixes of things than anything. I mean, I think unused mixes either tended to get thrown away or stolen, perhaps. I mean, we do know that at one point, when a bunch of tapes was moved from, I think when Brother Studios closed and the stuff went to a dedicated media facility, that a lot of it was looked at and things were thrown away because somebody thought, oh, these are, why do we keep these? Apparently, including a lot of log tapes that Chuck Britz had made, similar to the one that does survive, the one with the Help Me Rhonda session with Murray in attendance.
All right.
I'm a genius too, so a lot of that stuff, I think, just got destroyed, probably got destroyed because nobody nobody
So I
thought it
look,
meant.
so Dada was finished, or what's on here is just what
I
was
think Dada was probably least finished of all. As I have some
really.
vague recollection that there's actually there's a session that's on one of the boxes. I mean, certainly on the smile box, that was actually after the project had more or less collapsed, but they did it,
So
did it
so
anyway. Very
so the
distinctive.
version that's on here is probably just like a rough mix from from 67, probably.
I'd have to.
Yeah.
Give me
Okay.
10 minutes. I could look it up and tell you whether. I mean, I could actually do it sitting here.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
let's see. Let's see how I can do. Wait, let me get.
Oh, wow.
Lost. There
I
you
can't
are.
believe this is
Let me hide everything else. Hang on a second. Hide others. There it is. No, oh, damn it. That's not it. I just opened the wrong database.
the 1993 love love to say Dada, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you whether there's a mix of data. Maybe. Let's see. Put in data.
Do you have like all of the digital vault at your
We
house?
no, we see this is what made
Yeah.
Smile possible in 2012, because we had a random access database and we had all this material cataloged. Otherwise, it would have been,
That's
oh God, I got set. Hang on a second. I get
it's okay. It's okay.
to say dot. Ooh,
93. Yeah, that's I guess a question I had a while back, but like, is the version on here just a rough mix of in 1967? They just put it in the can and all right, that's it, or something.
one tapes. Let's see. Well, they see that. That's an 8-track. Let's see, one's prayer. One's 8-track, which 4-track. It's Wild Honey. Why did that come up? Give me a second. I should have done this.
All right.
It's 31. There's one. Oh. Nope. 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 ECD and oops. CD.
Like a spreadsheet.
We haven't updated the database in about 10 years, although somebody's working on that now. Let's take number 10.
Yeah. It seems like, yeah, like I said, it seems like the version on here might be, I mean, what do I know?
Yeah, I don't see a 1/4-inch tape with data on it, and if we had that, it would have turned up, because that would have been in the database 20 years ago.
We're almost finished now. I want to be around / workshop. That was just an instrumental. That was
That's
complete. Yeah, that was Now
exactly
look, which was later, of course, renamed Song for Children. Instrumental complete, but the vocals were lost. Gosh.
Again, this 4-track reel that had Cabot Essence and presumably Wonderful and Old Master Painter, because we know those were pulled.
I was gonna get to that. I was gonna get to that now. Yeah.
Could
Now the Old Master Painter
have had any of the masters and had vocals added. We just don't know.
Now the Old Master Painter / You Are My Sunshine, that was completed. That's right. That's one of the few things that was completed.
Yeah, but we don't have the multi-track.
No. Now Our Prayer was complete, right? Our Prayer.
Yeah, complete and then added to for 2020.
Now Wonderful, that was completed, right? It was marked final on the tape box.
Yeah, I mean, if there are backgrounds on it, we can assume it was complete.
Let's just say thank you so much for releasing the finished Wonderful on this box set. Thank you.
Frankly, the reason what we did was we specifically used mostly songs that had either been completed, like Cabin Essence and Prayer, and Surf's Up, or things that had been re-recorded, like Wonderful, because at that time it was the Beach. We were worried about the Beach Boys objecting, and by doing it that way, we figured nobody, would probably notice. They just look at the song titles. Oh yeah, Wonderful, fine, yeah.
And thanks
They,
again, and,
they did Wonderful in concert for years.
and thanks again for putting wind chimes on here, because wind chimes was finished, right?
Yeah, seems like it. Yeah, I mean, it's got
Because,
vocals.
but of course, it was later changed for the 2011, but the original version's on here. So, like, why would it be released on here but not on the 2011 box set? Was that just for time constraints or what? I mean,
I mean, that version.
yeah,
Well, like I said, the main release of the box set, is an emulation of Brian's completion. Now,
yeah.
why? I mean, an extant version from the time that was slightly different. I don't think we. I mean, we still filled up 5 CDs and kind of ran out of room anyway. So I don't know.
I heard someone say that quote something like, "I love all the versions of wind chimes, but I can tell that this one right here is the one he put together for Smile with that beautiful music box tag, which Michael Vossi described in his 1969 article." So I'm very glad that it exists that the finished wind chimes exists on here. All right, two more. Vegetables. So correct me if I'm wrong. That was all recorded but not edited. But you guys didn't edit that together until 2011, because the, the
I'm
one
trying to, I get the two vegetables. I know that first.
April 67.
No, I know, but yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on that one without
Okay.
without hearing it. I'm only thinking of the Smiley Smile
Now
version.
I heard what
Oh wait, no, the version.
you guys
The
did a
Smile
stereo
version
mix.
has the chomping, right? Or do they both have chomping? I can't.
Both
Remember.
have jumping.
Oh.
You guys did a stereo version for the sounds on Made in California, the orange box set.
Yeah.
I heard Brian's what people call the April assembly. Brian's very rough 1967 test edit attempt mix at Vegetables, and it literally sounds like he just gave up editing it after like 30 minutes. I mean,
I'll take your word for it. I'm not remembering anything about it. So.
Oh, okay.
If it exists, I'm sure.
But I'm very glad you guys finally edited that together in 2011 for the box set. I'm very glad. So anyway, all right, last song.
Yeah.
Of course, last but not certainly least, Surf's Up. Now, of course, everyone agrees that was not finished.
Hardly, yeah. No vocals on the first half and no second half at all. So except for Brian's demo.
Was that demo just supposed to be a demo, or was he recording, or were the vocals and piano supposed to be inserted onto the first movement? Or do we not know?
Oh, no. First of all, you couldn't do that. What's interesting is one thing we discovered, I think during the Smile
I'm
Box.
thinking digitally. I'm thinking too digitally.
No,
Again,
not, yeah,
my degree is in digital.
Here's what was tried. When the Beach Boys decided to finish it,
Yeah.
Brian wanted nothing to do with it. They tried using tape machines.
I remember that.
Brian's demo vocal onto part one. We have the tape of them doing it. It doesn't work at all. And then they tried it the other way. They had a band come in
and remake the first movement. Yeah.
Played to Brian's vocal, which we put on.
You guys released that in like on the Feel Free, Feel Flow.
On Feel Flows, yeah. And that's not bad. It's not quite.
It sounds to me that sounds terrible. I'm so glad that
they gave up on that too, and then
I'm so glad they said let's just re-record the vocal and just use the original first movement.
But whenever we did it, now of course easiest thing in the world. to
Yeah,
put Brian's vocal instead of Carl's. So, that probably took me half an hour, because you do it visually. You've got here's Carl's vocal, and you put in Brian's vocal, and you go, okay, I just got to match. Oh, and he held it longer. Well, I can fix that. I mean, it's
yeah. The
child's play now,
the
but absolutely impossible back then.
I tell you, I tell you, Al Jardine's vocals on the Coda on the night, which was recorded in 1971, of course. To me, that's the most beautiful thing I think I've ever heard musically wise.
But what
And
part is he singing?
the part where he's like a children's song, have you
Oh
listened?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
song to
Heard that,
me,
yes.
and it's for so and I'm so glad that you guys isolated that for the 5.1 endless DVD.
Mhm.
You know, I'm so glad you guys isolated his vocal singing that and put it in the surround uh version of Surf's Up, because of course it's buried in the regular version of the song.
Right.
But to me, I was always like, that's so beautiful. I wish I heard it more. I could finally hear it. So
A children's song. Have you listened as they play?
to me personally, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard musically. I one thing that blew my mind, which I don't think is even true, in in Dominic Priori's 2005 book, he made this astonishing claim, and he said, Brian, quote,
Here, but I'm waiting for the. I'm sure you can underline the astonishing. Go ahead.
he said, quote, I'm not sure if you read his book, but I mean,
I've read it.
when I read this, I shot up in my chair. I was at work. I was on my break. I shot up in my chair when I heard this. Okay, you ready for it? He's okay. He claims, quote, Brian held two final tracking sessions for the middle section of Surf's Up, both of which exist and remain unreleased to this day. I know. And
Believe
then
me, if we had them, they'd be released. The amazing discovery was, a couple of years ago, finding that version of Brian uh, trying to do Surfs Up in his home studio, and working on, like as if he was trying to assemble it, not just doing it once and giving up, but doing it, and we pieced it
yeah.
together. But I could never figure. I mean, he just may have been, fooling
Well, I'm
around.
talking about the
Oh,
January.
I know, but I'm just saying that's the only other, other than live Surfs Up we've ever found, and we couldn't really figure out what it
And you
must have
guys
just been
didn't
Brian fucking around because you couldn't possibly use it.
and you guys didn't find that until after the book was published.
We didn't find that
So,
till
so that can't be.
years ago, and it was unmarked. This is what the archiving also does: is you find things that stuff with a lot of stuff was done at Brian's studio, so nobody was taking really good notes the way they would have been if it was done at Western or Gold Star or something. So we'd find stuff
Yeah.
all.
But on paper, it says that there was a session for Surf's Up on January 23rd, 67. I think I read somewhere that Brian said we didn't do that, or do you think it was one of those sessions where he didn't show up, or
Could be anything.
but then this is what literally made me stand up in my chair, shoot up from my chair. What Prior says next in the book is, quote, a finished tape of Surf's Up from early 1967 does exist, although it has never been released in any form. I shot up from my chair and I was like,
This
what?
his mind.
No, I shot up from my chair and I believed that for like a day or something. I was like, why haven't you guys released that? Mark Linett, why haven't you released that? But obviously it's not true.
What's the same question? Yeah, well, you're right. Why haven't we? We certainly would have if it existed. Let's put it that way.
Or is that the biggest
How
secret you
could
guys
we
are
not?
or is that the biggest secret you guys are keeping from us? No, I'm kidding.
Think about it. I mean, it isn't worth the airspace. But why would we? I mean, I can barely understand. The guy who has the acetates that won't even let Brian have a copy. And I don't even know who it is because it went through a friggin' dealer who had like the like to strangle, but just kidding.
We'll cut that.
But you know,
Now, how many?
why
Now
would we keep it? You know,
we made it through all the Smile songs. Has anyone ever done that with you or no? Song by song?
I don't think so.
Uh,
Maybe you know, maybe 20 years ago, but
No, I mean like in like an interview setting.
no. I mean, if it's if we've got it and it's worth releasing and we can get it released, we're certainly going to.
I want to get him. I want to. I've never talked to him, but that's the one thing I want to ask him. What is your source for that? Anyway,
Well,
how?
I can guess. I mean, well, the probably several parts. I mean, a lot of what I don't know where he gets a lot of this stuff. I mean, saying you know things were finished and you know, whatever. But you know, there may be an AFL. Then I could ask somebody who could probably tell me where that fantasy might come from. There might be an AFM sheet, which doesn't mean the session happened, but makes it a little more likely a session happened, and therefore, if the session happened, the
Yeah,
tape was lost or destroyed or was canceled, or you know, we
yeah.
know that you know Brian was getting erratic at that point, and you know, if he booked the session and canceled it, or you know, showed up and said the vibes aren't right, I don't know if he did that,
But the claim
but
that
he
there's,
still got paid, and it would look like they had a session. So,
but the claim in this
but it
book,
doesn't exist. Let's put it that way.
but Brian and Van Dyke signed off, wrote the forwards to this book. So obviously they didn't read that section or anything like
Well,
that.
you have to understand something else. You know, you
But to claim that there's a finished tape in the vaults and that it's you had,
got you to take notice. So you
had
know,
you heard that before I just told you or no?
I don't really pay
Yeah,
any attention to that kind of fantasy. You know,
How now?
I
Now,
know what's there and what isn't, and that's all that matters. I mean, you know, speculating.
yeah.
It's back to speculating. What the record would have been in 1966. Well,
What
if
what's your
well, what
favorite?
I was going to say is here's a basic problem when you if you say well, Brian Van Dyke wrote the intro, so but no, the people who know the least about this stuff are the artists who created it.
Yeah,
They did, if there was a session, they did it and they went home and they forgot all about it.
yeah,
People that spend their time going through this like it's the Dead Sea Scrolls and documenting it and you know, I was once working with Jeff Lynne on a Ringo album, and I'm a huge fan of the second band he was in, The Move, that preceded Electric Light Orchestra. So I wanted to ask him some questions, and I asked him a few questions. He didn't really have any. And he turned to
was
me
he
and
just
said,
like,
You probably know more about that band than I do."
and that's the thing. That's the thing. You know that phrase, our heroes let us down. Well, you know what I mean? Our heroes. No, it's a phrase. It's like once you meet your heroes, it's
Oh,
like your heart gets let down. It's like
that's not bad. I mean, it's just, you know, that's
it's like you
like
meet someone. It's
where
like,
I
what
always
did you
put
meet?
it.
It's like, what
Here's
did
where
you?
I put it. Everybody in the world, you know, who likes the Beach Boys music is a fan, including you and me, Alan, everybody. The only people that don't are not in that category exactly are the guys who made the music, the band members themselves, and they
Yeah,
have a totally different relation, both you know, historically and personally, to the music that we all have a different take on. You know, our take on. You know, so I always like to surmise. You
yeah,
know, Carl Wilson sings this incredibly beautiful vocal on God Only Knows, and everybody says it's the greatest record ever made, and da da da. For all we know, he had a fight with his wife or a bad chicken salad sandwich, and that's what he remembers, or he remembered about doing that, or it was a it was a
yeah.
real itch to do that vocal. Let's pick something
You have
more
a great point.
possible.
You
He
have a,
remembers it being just a horrible ordeal to have Brian have him make me sing it 1,500 times.
yeah.
That's
Now that
that's the artist's memory and the artist's relation to the creation of the art. And I'm just a fanciful assumption, but all the rest of us just
yeah,
react to, oh, I
I
heard
met,
it. You know, first time I heard that
you have,
record,
you have a point there. It's like I met the author of my favorite book a few years ago, and I even contributed a little to his most recent book, which was one of the highlights of my life. But anyway, I when I first met him, I was like, "What did you mean?" As a fan, I was like, "What did you mean by when you wrote on this page?" And he looked at me and he was like, "I don't know. That was 50 years ago." So it's same thing,
There's that, yes, there's that too. And so you're getting that
It's
with me.
like
You're asking me about little details about
yeah,
the
he was
smile
like,
box.
I don't know. It's like I wrote that literally. Right? He's like, I wrote that 50 years ago. I don't know. Which is your favorite version of Surf's Up? The 1971 version, the
Boy.
uh,
Well, favorite, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, I like the version I created by putting Brian's vocal in the first half because it's
on the box
the only
set
thing.
or on the most recent
Wherever we
stereo one
allocated it, I don't, huh? I don't
on
know where. I don't know where.
on the box
Probably it's on main.
on the version on the box set or the version that you guys did in stereo in like 2 years ago.
Which box set?
Oh, the
You mean?
small sessions box set. Is that the
Oh,
one?
okay. Well, that's probably they're all, yeah, they're all the same. I've done it a couple times. Maybe that one. I don't know. I mean, to be honest, while I admire what the Beach Boys did, and certainly it was I loved it at the time. Listening to it now, to me, it does seem a little, they constructed it out of spare parts in a way.
Yeah.
Did a good job, but it loses a little something um, for that as opposed to being a right now creation. But that's just me. I mean, I may know too much about the technology. I gather I read somebody's taken that '68 version and put Brian's vocal on on the track.
68 version, you mean the 71 version?
I mean, yeah. Sorry, the whenever the heck it was,
Yeah,
or
yeah. I get what you
71
uh
or 72. Whenever, yeah, Brian doing it sort of as a demo again. Yeah, sorry.
yeah.
Putting that on
You
the.
guys found now you found another version like 10 like when you guys were doing the small box set of Brian just at the piano playing in 1960s in late 67 just playing Surf's Up on the Country Air. Is that
Oh yeah, so I'm right. Yeah, it
yeah.
was an earlier, yeah, it was an earlier version of him doing it, but
Oh,
not.
that's what you're talking about. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
like
Somebody's put
so
those
you guys
vocals on probably did an extraction and put those well.
so
Anyway,
you guys didn't find that until like
no,
30
we were
years ago?
again, see, it's home recordings and when I was
Oh,
archiving
wow.
the reel, there it was.
That's incredible. It sounds like he's just jamming. It doesn't seem like he's just serious because I mean,
It's a little, it's weird. I mean, he may just have
why
been
would he
upset,
and
but
why would he
it's not
re-record
like
it?
he keeps he he keeps stopping and then picking it up where he stopped. He's not playing it again. So from a studio point of view, it sounds like he's trying to construct, trying to play it, something he can put together, although it would have meant a lot of edits. But on the other hand, you can't figure out why he would do that because the piano and the vocal aren't isolated in any kind of way where you could, but maybe he thought, well, I'll do a
Why
performance and
would he?
I'll overdub on it, but obviously he never did. So
And the 800 pound 800,000 the and
yeah.
the big question is why would he re-record that at the piano when he already had the best version of him singing at the piano, which you guys released on this?
Well, I doubt that if you'd asked him at the time, he would have remembered that he had that.
I mean, and
Because
he did that with Wonderful. He
he's
started
in the studio. He's in his studio, and he's at a piano, and he
and
wants to. He want like him playing Ding Dang for 100 hours.
and it's like
Again,
same thing
you're
with
trying to make your logic out of knowing all this,
yeah,
how that would affect Brian the artist.
and it's
Brian
like
the artist just wants to sing and play this song that he co-wrote called "Surfs Up."
same thing with Wonderful. He did like he did like two more ad hoc versions of Wonderful, even after he had the best version in the can,
Well, you're saying best version. We can't even assume, but one possibility is that if he even knew about that or thought about that, He didn't think it was the best version, or he just wanted to do it again.
Maybe that second version he did, maybe that's how he has it in his head, but then he did the same. But then again, the original version is how he did it on the 2004 sub. But anyway, how many we're almost done. We're almost done. Just like 3 or 4 more direct questions. How many
Oh,
how many more how many acetates did you find in the vault? In the vaults? How many acetates are there?
almost none. There's very little of that.
What?
I just think that, I think that, well, that was take home stuff. There was never, very little of that was left, in the studio. There wasn't what it was for. So,
Really?
Yeah.
But like the acetate of Barnyard, like you found that in the vault, right? Or no?
remember, I guess so. There are a few, but very,
Few?
compared to
Wow.
the amount of recording, very, very little,
Now, Al and Bruce have said publicly that they have tons
yeah,
and
I
tons
know.
of
Yeah,
acetates. Have you
Bruce,
guys?
I don't think Bruce necessarily did. When Al finally went to look for them, he couldn't find them. So who
Oh,
knows?
so he just said, "Oh, I probably have some." Did you?
And,
Have you guys?
again, it's a quite,
Did you
they
digitize?
they live this, and so what they remember is what happened all those years ago, and they haven't been sitting around thumbing through acetates, for 60 years.
Have you guys digitized any of Bruce's acetates, small acetates, or any acetates?
I've never gotten any acetates from Bruce. If he has them, he hasn't given them to us.
Boogie, what are you waiting for? Oh my god!
No, don't believe me. We've asked. Of
Really?
course.
Oh, okay. I guess it's for sure. Okay.
I could surmise that, in 1966, he had a bunch of acetates, and he moved.
They're his. They're I guess, yeah.
Well, here, I'll tell you something. Good example. Okay, so when Chuck Britz died, I contacted, maybe a year later, I contacted his son to see, actually his son had an award that Chuck was given that we helped get fixed because it had the actual records on it. And wondered if his dad had anything, all those log tapes and all that. Nope, nothing, don't have a thing.
Well, it makes sense because to him, this was just another album of thousands that he did. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe, but okay. So I don't know. This is now 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know how I heard this, but I heard from somewhere that Dean Britz was selling a whole bunch of stuff. He was moving and selling a whole bunch of stuff, and there were records and there were some acetates. And I got a hold of him, and we had never looked at his father's record collection, amongst which were some acetates, including some Beach Boy acetates, which we bought.
Oh boy.
And it's much earlier stuff. And and other things that his dad had worked on, but they were just been sitting there for, whatever it is, 30 years or 20 years since his father died, and 30 years before that. So,
Now, one thing that Alan Boyd said, he said in 2011 that one thing you don't hear on the tapes is all the quote drama and angst on the session tapes between the members. So is that just some? I mean, it's looking
talking about during Smile.
Yeah. I mean,
No, you certainly don't. You hear them working really hard.
The lore? Is that just the legend and the lore of, oh, there's this fighting going on, and it's just because when I hear the session tapes on the Smile box set, it sounds like the Beach Boys are ready to go, and they record everything that Brian asked them to record on. Yeah. I mean, you don't hear any fighting. I mean, unless you guys edited that out, but he said they're done.
Well, the only fighting I can recall, any kind of fighting, really hearing, some joking around, and and obviously the prime example is that Murray tape.
Yeah,
that's not the band. That's Brian and his, and his dad. And the only other one that comes to mind is the very early rehearsal of them doing, surfing before they ever recorded it. And, where Dennis is cutting up and they're going to throw him out of the group and all that stuff. That's about it, really.
So I guess all that is just legend and lore about how there was fight. I mean, you see it You see
Yeah,
the
well, all you can say is it didn't spill over into the creative process. I mean, whether,
like in
whether
the Love and Mercy movie, how it shows them like yelling at each other. Was there none of that?
in
Or
the studio, well,
yeah,
maybe, I don't know. I wasn't there, and obviously it wasn't recorded. So
yeah. Now,
if we had all those log tapes, maybe we'd have a better idea. But yeah,
I'm surprised that yeah, yeah. Now, big question, not a big question because I know this is the probably you asked this a lot. If
only a half hour over what I wanted. Go ahead.
okay, yeah, I can do this like two more. If Paul McCartney really was at the April 10th session of Vegetables, why can't we hear him on the tapes?
I'm not. Yeah. So maybe he wasn't,
And
or maybe
but what's
it was a different session or a different version. I don't know, but yeah, I've wondered about that myself.
what's crazy is that in one
Can't
interview,
hear a thing. I mean, it's all, first of all, it is only, it's a multi-track, so we don't have like, oh,
and it's like now in one interview, McCartney said he had no memory of it, and then in another interview, he said he did have a memory of it. So I wonder if he was just going along with it, like, oh yeah, 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 or just I don't know.
well, he may have been there and not done it, but you see, there's only one, or he may have done it and then they did it again and recorded over it. I mean, there's no session tape, so it's an 8-track. So there's one track with the chomping.
Yeah.
Whatever the last take was of the chomping, that's what's there.
Will the original Good Vibrations music video be remastered and re-released? And released. And released.
Oh,
Or the video that they did for Do You Like Worms? Will any of that stuff be released?
whatever's gonna. I haven't seen it, so I don't know what's in the doc that's coming out in May. I have not seen it, but that would be the only place it would be likely to show up anytime soon.
Okay.
But,
Now
again, that's not my department.
you know what? I was just lamenting the other night about all of the master tapes that were lost in the Universal fire in 2009.
Nothing of ours, but yeah.
I know. I was thinking, I mean, you just look at the list and it's just endless and endless. I'm just so glad that none of that stuff ended up there.
Well, there's two things. One is, they don't, Beach Boys don't store it there. It's in a private facility. And the other is, like I said, 90%, all the important stuff has been digitally preserved, and there's copies of it, all over the place. I mean, many, many copies. And then, of course, except for whatever you'll be able to do with advancing technology, we've released a huge portion of it. So it almost becomes irrelevant, except in terms of when they start doing hologram Beach Boys and performing their new songs with a new backing track, transmogrified from whatever.
Second,
The mind boggles.
second to last question, and then we're done. Now you did something very naughty when
What?
now you did something very naughty whenever you listened to the Dairy Parks acetates. Is that right? You recorded in your phone pocket the
Oh, yeah, I had my phone out. And I just
great shape.
recorded. Yeah, I recorded it. We stuck it on the end of
Yeah. What? So I guess that would have gone right before Barnyard, in between the I'm in great shape. I don't know.
We don't know. I mean, saw the acetates might give us a clue. I have no idea. I mean, we do have a track sheet. I think maybe it's not a.
Is that the only? Is that the only thing that was on the Dairy Parks acetates that?
Oh, there's. I don't really remember. I want to say there was some known stuff and some unknown stuff.
Really, but the biggest one was the I'm in great shape, right? I mean,
I don't know whether I got that because it was. I mean,
did you record the other stuff in your pocket or no?
No, I don't know. I didn't. Whether I got that one because it was the most interesting or just dumb luck.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
my spy cam.
Is there any way we can get those acetates?
I don't even know who has them. It's on a list of things to do.
Can't you just steal them at this point? I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, that might be
not
gonna happen, but it might be the most realistic way, to get them back. Because clearly, whoever has them doesn't want to share them. You paid a lot of money for them, but so what?
Yeah. All right. Last question.
I tried very hard to get a set to get him for Brian and through the broker, and
All we can do is pray at this moment. All right.
well, I mean, it'd be nice to have him. I somebody paid a lot of money. It's not like I found, good vibration.
Some guy actually recreated on YouTube the I'm in great shape acid Dury Parks acid
From what
by ear,
what I-
and because when I heard it on what you guys released, of course it's in your pocket when you record it.
it was
to
in front of
hear. It was kind of hard to hear, but this guy on YouTube, he recreated it by ear, I guess, in Pro Tools or wherever, and it's so easy to
Dun, 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 dun,
dun,
dun,
dun, dun, dun, dun, dun, dun, dun. I know, it's like I hear it now.
Yeah, well.
So it's like, could that just
No, I mean, it's on a list of things to do, but I wouldn't hold my breath, I mean,
the original
they
thing?
haven't shown up by now, means that somebody's being very, very tight about it.
Okay,
And
here,
this is what leads to the possibility that, that's not the only thing.
it's okay. Last thing, where's the Grammy? I have to see the Grammy.
Oh, it's just downstairs next to my other two.
Now, why didn't you go on stage to get it, or were you not there?
At that point, I own a remote business or audio truck, and I had been working along with the truck at the Grammys for about 7 or 8 years at that point. So I was in rehearsal for the broadcast show. The prelim show where they give out most of the awards is in the afternoon, and the broadcast is at 5 o'clock. So I couldn't be there. Of course the only time I wasn't in the audience that we won. I just by luck we got done with the rehearsal, so I could make it over to the photo op. But that's why it never occurred to me, to bring a nice jacket or anything, thinking we were going to win.
Did you have a pretty good idea that the Small Sessions was going to win the box set? That it was going to win the Grammy?
After Pet Sounds lost to Hank Williams, whatever it was, 10 years before, and after Brian Smile lost in every category to Ray Charles because he had a hit album, a movie, and he died that year. I had given it, and the historic category is the silliest of all, because you wind up, you're comparing total apples to oranges. I mean, what does Pet Sounds have to do to compete against Hank Williams?
Yeah. What's
I'd
crazy?
rather see it going to living people than dead people, but what are you gonna do?
What's crazy now that I think about it is, since the Smile Sessions box set won a Grammy, therefore that means every Smile session in 1966 and 67 got a Grammy, kind of, theoretically. You see what I mean? Since all the sessions are on there.
I think more to the point, since then.
Have you thought of it that way?
Nominate anything else by the group for anything.
I'm out of
I gotta run.
I'm out of questions. That's it. Hey, I just want to thank you so much. Thank you very much. I hope you
My
enjoyed
pleasure.
it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
glad we could do it. Take care.
You be well.